Racism, a word that can be used to describe the history of the first Transcontinental Railroad in the United States. And by the end of this video, you will have a good understanding of what is the racism I am talking about. But before we can get to that, let's take a look at some background information. The railroad was built in 1869, before which Americans had been trying to settle west of the Mississippi River for over half a century. But there was a problem. How does one get to the west? Prior to the construction of the railroad, people settled west by going on wagons, often on caravans that use specific routes. A famous example is the Oregon Trail. You might know it from the video game, and yes, the Oregon Trail was a real thing that existed in history. But trails such as the Oregon Trail have major disadvantages. For instance, the length of the journey, which takes 4 to 6 months, was long. It was also very unsafe due to climate, disease, etc. As such, the American government began to consider building a railroad that would stretch across the entire continent to reach the Pacific in order to make the journey easier, cheaper, and faster. The government granted rights to build railroads to 2 companies, Central Pacific and Union Pacific. The Union Pacific was responsible for the eastern half of the railroad, while Central Pacific was responsible for the western half. The reason they did this is to create competition between the 2 companies, as they would rush to complete their half first to secure the rights to the land area which they built the railroad. Union Pacific got the easy part, since the land on their half of the continent is mostly flat and easy to build stuff on it. On the other hand, Central Pacific section is filled with mountains and deserts, which were not friendly for the construction of infrastructure. Determined not to be beaten by Union Pacific, Central Pacific thought of an idea. Why don't we hire Chinese people? This might sound random, but it actually worked. Central Pacific sailed to China and hired many Chinese farmers who were impoverished and had little choice but to immigrate across the Pacific Ocean to work for the railroad company. After their arrival, the Chinese workers were primarily involved in laying tracks and blasting tunnels through mountains. The Chinese workers' incredible speed and reliability quickly astounded the company. They worked in harsh climates and grueling conditions involving severe conditions ranging from blazing summers and freezing winters. The company then hired more and more Chinese people, and eventually the Chinese constituted 90% of the Central Pacific workforce. They were assigned to more dangerous and harsher tasks, such as handling explosives and working in treacherous terrains like the Sierra Nevada mountains. They often got hurt or even died because there wasn't enough safety equipment or medical help. Despite the danger, they had little access to healthcare, and the company usually ignored or didn't fully report these deaths. Also, the Chinese workers received less pay than their white counterparts. Typically, Chinese workers were paid $5 to $10 less and didn't get extra benefits. White workers, on the other hand, made more money and also get free housing, food, tools, and medical care. What made the situation even worse is the widespread racially motivated violence and hate crimes committed against the Chinese immigrants. They include the Los Angeles Chinese Massacre of 1871, the Squaw Valley Massacre of 1885, and the Rock Springs Massacre of 1885, just to name a few. You might be asking yourself, why would people target the Chinese workers? Don't they already have higher pay and better conditions than them? Well, that is exactly why they targeted them. You see, the employers would look favorably on employing the Chinese workers since they were required to be paid less, did their work faster and better, and were less likely to go on strikes. As such, the white workers treated the Chinese with hostility because they were seen as capable of taking their jobs. This explains why, on May 10, 1869, during the ceremony that marked the joining of the Central Pacific and Union Pacific Railroads at Promontory Summit, Utah, Chinese individuals were barred from attending, and they never got the recognition they deserve from their hard work. However, racism against Chinese Americans were far from over. In 1882, after several more decades of growing anti-Chinese sentiment, Congress passed the Chinese Exclusion Act, which became the first U.S. law ever to restrict immigration from a specific ethnic group. That law was not repealed until 1943, but that would be the topic of another video. Racism is still a problem today in the United States and throughout the world. But remember, you don't need to be a part of a discriminated group to stand up against it. Racism hurts us all. By speaking out, working together, and learning about the racist history, we can build a more just and inclusive society, and to let the racist past never repeat itself again.